Hey guys, Alan here with our Bible Moments. Thanks for being with me. We're going to be talking still down the lines of character traits of Jesus here. We're going to be talking about being modest. Here's the definition I'm using just so that we know, because there's so many different directions that we can go with this word modest. So it's a purity of the mind out of the right relationship with God that leads to purity of manners, morals, and godly behavior. You know, I know we can talk about purity of dress. We can talk about different. We can talk about, the size of our homes. We can talk about the way that we dress. There's so many different things we can talk about here, but the what I really want to use here for a definition is purity of the mind out of the right relationship with God that leads to purity of manners, morals, and godly behavior. So in the book of Ephesians, I want to read a few verses here out of the book of Ephesians, the 4th chapter. Going to pick up in verse 17. It says, "This I say therefore, and testify in the Lord, that ye henceforth walk not as other Gentiles walk." Now, when he uses this word Gentiles, he's always talking basically about sinners or non-believers. He says, from now on, I want you to walk different. I want you to walk differently than the world walks. And he goes on and he says, not as the Gentiles walk, in vanity of their minds. And he goes on here in verse 18, having the understanding darkened, being alienated from the life of God to the ignorance that is in them because of the blindness of their hearts. Notice he talks about, as far as having that the world has this darkened view. It has a lack of understanding, that they're alienated, they're separated from God himself, and they're done that through ignorance, he says here in verse 19, who being past feelings have given themselves over unto lasciviousness to work all uncleanness and greediness. But ye have not so learned Christ. Notice, this is not God's way. In verse 21, he says, if so be that ye have heard me, that ye have taught by him, as the truth is in Jesus, that ye put off concerning former conversations, or that's behavior he's talking about here, not just words here. The old man, he says, we're going to put this old man and we're going to put him off. We are going to make a change of our heart. And he goes on, he said, we're going to put off the former conversations, the old man, which is corrupt and deceitful lusts he talks about. And then in verse 23, I love what he says, and be renewed in the Spirit. Be renewed. Be made new. See, purity of the mind, we have to have a clean thought life. That's why when we look at when we talk about wearing the entire armor of God, the whole armor of God, part of that is the helmet of salvation, because of the fact that we need to protect our mind. In Proverbs 23:7, it says, for as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. So if I was to ask you, hey, do you have a dirty mind? How would you answer that? Well, before you consider it, I guess, maybe you kind of look at the definition of dirty, and dirty is that which is not pure. If we look in Genesis, the 6th chapter, verse 5, it says, and God saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth. Notice, this is only into the 6th chapter of the very first book of the Bible, going back to Noah here. And he says, and God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. We have an Adamic nature. We are not going to naturally do good. But, a dirty mind, it's a mind that it's been tainted by all these different entanglements of the world that are inappropriate, that are not the way of a Christian. They're not the way of Jesus himself. It's not the character of Jesus. In Psalms 139, 23, 24, he says, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there's any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way of everlasting." Have you ever taken and just said, "God, search my life. I want you to take it apart. I want you to dismantle it, and I want you to take and reveal what's wrong within my life so I can be closer to you"? He says, Psalmist David says, "Search me, O God." That's bold. Know my thoughts. Of course, God knows our thoughts, right? In Psalms 10:3, he says, Psalms, the 10th division, verse 3, he says, "I will set no wicked thing before mine eyes. I hate the work of them that turn aside. It shall not cleave to me." Notice those first words, though. I will set no wicked thing before me. We have to avoid some things. Within our Christian life, we have to watch our lives. We have to avoid some things that are out there. We have to watch the mind. We have to be careful to what we expose ourselves to, because thoughts become actions, and I'll talk about that a little more in a second. Have you ever noticed something? Have you ever noticed how that people kind of love dirt? It's why so much of the news, I guess, is just about dirt and garbage. You hear it and you see it and you take it in your mind and you picture it and you imagine it, and now your own mind has become dirty as well. And from a dirty mind springs up dirty acts. Imagine your mind is a big wash tub, and probably in my case it's a little wash tub, but if you fill it with dirt, the water, it starts getting dirty. And if you fill it only with that which is pure, the water is clean. And so I always say it's like a computer, garbage in, garbage out. We have to watch what we take in within our minds, our thought life, our visual life, our hearing life. We need to take and look at all of our senses. Kind of like those monkeys, see no evil, hear no evil type thing. Speak no evil. Forgot that one. In Philippians, the 4th chapter, verse 8, he says, "Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things." Watch your thoughts, because your thoughts become words. Watch your words, they become actions. Watch your actions, they become habits. Watch your habits, because they turn into your character. And watch your character, because that is your destiny. Let the mind of God be in you. Let the Master be in you. So we need the pure mind, and we need pure actions. Psalms 24, verses 3 and 4, it says, "Who shall ascend into the hill of the Lord? Or who shall stand in his holy place? He that hath clean hands and a pure heart, who hath not lifted up his soul unto vanity, nor sworn deceitfully. Sworn deceitfully, I'm sorry." See, the hands, they're instruments of action. The actions, they can be holy actions, they can be unholy actions, they can be clean hands, they can be dirty hands. Being the fact that I do a lot of things around medical, it seems like, I'm washing my hands 5,000 times a day, it seems like, many times, because they get contaminated, and I have to constantly keep them clean. So to have these clean hands, it all starts with the mind, right? The hands act out the mind. So to have holy actions, you have to have clean hands. You have to have clean hands that are morally, ethically, spiritually upright. To do right. To do wrong, it's not the fact that we're going to be perfect. It's just what we're striving for. We're striving for perfection, much like we talked about last week. In 1 Timothy 5:22, it says, lay hands suddenly on no man. He's talking about our tempers here, right? He's talking about our actions. And he goes on, he says, lay hands suddenly on no man, neither be partakers of other men's sins. Keep thyself pure. In 2 Timothy 2:22, he says, flee also youthful lusts, but follow righteousness, faith, charity, peace with them that call on the Lord out of a pure heart. See, the heart is the center of us. It's what we are. And that's what we have to keep clean. And we'll talk about that here because we're going to talk about the purity of the heart. We need clean hearts. In Matthew 5:8, he says, blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. Look in Proverbs 4:23, he says, keep thine heart with all diligence, from out it are the issues of life. The heart is used in scriptures as the most comprehensive term, I guess you could say here, for the authentic, real person, who we are. It's part of our being. It's been described as a place of consciousness and spiritual activity, I guess you could say. It's not that pumping organ that we have in our chest, but it is our lifeblood as Christians. When we look at Mark, the 7th chapter, verses 21 through 23, he says, for from within, out of the hearts of men, proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, murders, thieves, covetousness, wickedness, deceitfulness, lasciviousness, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, foolishness. All these evil things come from within and defile a man. That's not what we want in our lives as Christians. A dirty heart does its own thing. And I think today we see a lot of people doing their own thing, don't we? You see it on the outside. You can almost see their thoughts. They can even they can put on this beautiful, beautiful exterior, but inwardly they're tainted. They've got idols. They're running by their own drumbeat. They're not running by God's drumbeat. The heart, it's the root of the problem. It's what's well rooted within our lives. Jeremiah reminds us, and I'm going to kind of close out with one other verse after this, but Jeremiah reminds us, first of all, that the heart is deceitful in all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? That's why we need God to take and search it out. And then one last verse, Psalms 51:10. Psalmist David again, he says, create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Create a clean heart. This is Alan. I'm going to take and let you go at this point. Thank you so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it, and we will catch up just a little bit later.